Kill. 3, 2, 1, kill.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee and Killing. This is a podcast of a bunch of writers sitting around drinking and talk about writing, killing, publishing, and the whole creative process. We will not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Kill Dave. Today's hosts are John Schmidt, Raymond Miller, the late Dave Welsh, and me, Jeannie Warner.
That was on time.
This is episode 70, Dude, the Hero and Sidekick's Excellent Journey. You may notice...
What happened to episode 69?
We thought about episode 69, and I don't think you can just throw a number out like 69 onto a casual. It needs something special. So we're going to build up a little bit of suspension here and make everybody wonder what happened to episode 69. When we have something delicious enough, we will share it with you.
Antissa.
Say it.
So Sidekicks, the last episode, which was episode 68, we talked a little bit about bad guys. Let's talk about sidekicks. The first sidekick I was forced to read. My grandmother was getting an English degree when I was learning to read. So I got One Fish, Two Fish, Sam I Am, and then the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, for those of you who were never forced to read the Epic of Gilgamesh in elementary school, Gilgamesh was a jerk. He was a tyrant. He was an asshole, big prima nocta guy with his people, the Uruk. And the Uruk prayed to the gods to change their king. The gods did not change their king. The gods gave him a friend for kind of a foil that everything he was. So here's this tyrant, civilized king. They gave him a wild man who was pure, and his name was Enkidu. And it was interesting because it also followed the first ever literary fridging of a sidekick, which caused the main character growth and change for the better. So for kind of all of the current, aren't we tired of fridging to give the hero something to go? It started a long, long time ago.
But the phrase is new.
The phrase is kind of new.
So you do what you do, and Enkidu is the first sidekick, except for, here's my rant, sidekick, hero, villain are all constructs of the point of view of the author trying to get something across. Because there are religions where Enkidu was the fearless leader and Gilgamesh fades into the background. And I don't know if their stories survive, but it's the same for the villain. If the villain wins, he can rewrite it to be his history or her history. Unfortunately, it's usually his.
We could...
You agree? Disagree?
I don't know. I would say there's, of course, different things. This was the hero, and, by these history writers over here, he was the butcher. So some people say Vlad Tepes, and sticking a pole up all of those Turkish guys' assholes was really being a hero of his kingdom, whereas he was this horrible, horrible villain to the Turks. So
that's a good point.
Honestly, he was just the
No pun intended, right?
European winner of Halloween decoration for many centuries.
It's true.
We still honor his victory. But what is the point of a sidekick then?
Well, I love the sidekicks for me. I mean, one of my favorites was always Sancho Panza. And I felt a sidekick could fill many different kinds of roles. And one was just anybody who needs to use the Socratic method to teach something expository to the audience. I don't want to monologue at all, but I want to say, Dave, as you know.
Without breaking the fourth wall, sort of.
Yes. And that plays into the hero's journey of going into the new world, having someone to walk you through it. They don't necessarily have to be a mentor, but you got to get the information across.
Yeah.
Well, it also allows, many characters, and maybe it's just something I get when I'm looking at them, a habit of, I need to be able to express my emotions, but I have a heroic image here, so I can't do that. So I can express my concerns and troubled thoughts with you without actually having to emote at all. It's a theory.
A dignity dump. We'll call it
a dignity dump.
Yeah.
Never heard that term before.
I just made
it up. I think you just wrote it. It was...
Congratulations.
Beautiful, man.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
The dignity dump. You have Sancho Panza was gross in appetite, but full of common sense and wit, whereas Don Quixote was a mad idealist who wanted to tilt at windmills. So whether the pitcher hits the stone or the stone hits the pitcher, it's going to be bad for the pitcher. And
Right.
so that's the contrast, that it's got to be with the hero, but showing, for better or for worse, a different side.
So if that's the purpose of a sidekick, I'm not saying it's the only purpose, but for the moment, if that's the purpose of a sidekick, how do you decide between that and a soliloquy, which serves more or less the same purpose?
I would say that's, are you writing a stage or a movie or a...
Well, no.
And also, now you're getting into the author's decisions.
It does.
Will I have him speaking to the fourth wall, or the author? The author of whatever gender.
Well, show, don't tell, right? You were saying that before in a different episode, John. It's showing action instead of just telling you more and more about the world you live in.
Well, if it's just on the page, you can describe the hero's the hero's thoughts just as well as you can describe anything else, and that's not breaking any fourth wall or anything. But what is the advantage?
Well, I was going to move forward.
Yeah, John, you sound like you're underwater.
I'm
Neither
thinking
here nor
of
there to the
Aquaman.
discussion.
I'm thinking of Aquaman's sidekick, the great whale. But moving on.
What about Lady Macbeth as a sidekick? Sidekick.
Well, we haven't exhausted all the purposes for a sidekick.
Yeah. Well, we have things like for Huck Finn was this, really a great sidekick for Tom Sawyer. And he was such a good sidekick that after all, we didn't even need Tom. He got his own book, but we got a new sidekick in Jim. So kind of the transitive nature of sidekicks. Do they each become a hero in a story and get a new one? It's another path to take.
It is a path to take unless you're, a little dark, then maybe you don't get your own story ever. But that's probably later on in the conversation.
You get your own story.
Eventually.
Just 5 words on a gravestone.
Yeah. Well,
it's kind of a disappointing story. Another purpose, perhaps, discuss is contrasting the nature of the hero with that of the sidekick, either showing how terrifically great the hero is or how incompetent he is, or just how his personality differs from some norm that's represented by the sidekick.
All right, I'm going to lay you a story that I'd been thinking about that as the hero is thoughtless, callow, and selfish, and his sidekick is a murderess. Tinkerbell.
Oh.
Tinkerbell is Peter Pan's sidekick.
I knew you were going to set us up for something. I knew it wasn't as simple as straightforward, and I walked right into that one smiling like an idiot. Oh, man. That's going to be stuck in my head.
Smiling like a crocodile?
Well, I'd always been waiting when I said, hey, they were going to have Tinkerbell movies. And I thought, okay, great. Let's find out how she became a little murderess. But no, she's this nice little Tinker fairy. And like, Disney, what are you doing?
And Disney's doing what Disney does.
And we wanted to play with it. It's like, so where do you get to the, oh, there's the Wendy lady flying overhead. Peter Pan said you should totally shoot her down and kill her. I'm just saying she hired contract people to try to kill Wendy, her rival.
Huh.
So she fit under the Lady Macbeth category of sidekicks for me.
Oh, man.
Lady Macbeth
You're stretching the definition of sidekick.
I don't think
Maybe
that I am.
Okay, wait a second. So I didn't want to fast forward a little bit, but from what I understand, the definition of sidekick is someone who is supportive, faithful, and loyal. And regardless of whether that's a sidekick to the protagonist, the antagonist, the hero, or the villain, you got to admit, Tinkerbell was loyal. That's a long time.
We have to point out that Peter Pan was the named hero of the story. Therefore, his sidekick had to have been Tinkerbell. Just like Macbeth is the main named hero of the story. It's a tragedy, or history, depending on how you want to look at it. Lady Macbeth is his faithful sidekick. Because you get Nora Charles and the Thin Man,
This wife as sidekick thing, I don't know.
I did go through some tropes, and having the quote unquote loyal housewife does count as a sidekick. One of the, I don't know, like 75 listed on the website. So maybe.
Yeah, it's less common today, but it used to be all the rage.
Well, has anybody reversed that? Is there a male spouse who's a sidekick?
I would say that Silent Bob is definitely Jay's sidekick. Remember his heterosexual life partner?
Yes. God, I just had it in my head. Kim Possible. I didn't watch a lot of those television shows, but isn't that kid who follows around? Isn't that her sidekick?
What about the chicken Kick-Ass? She was his sidekick.
Oh, see, that's the thing, though. I guess he was the name hero. So even though no matter how competent she was a sidekick, kind of like Penny from Inspector Gadget, which you named earlier. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The competent sidekick.
Well, that was a different mold that I was sort of enjoying when I was gathering my list of what happens when you have an incompetent hero and a badass sidekick, because Inspector Gadget and Penny is perfectly into the bumbling idiot, very smart sidekick. I watched
Jeeves and Wooster.
Jeeves and Wooster. Ugh. Maxwell Smart in 99.
Definitely.
The Green Hornet and Kato.
Right.
Definitely Green Hornet and Kato. In some ways, Lone Ranger and Tano, but it depends on what era the movie's made.
No, neither of them is incompetent. They're just slightly differently competent. Kind of like, well, if you're going to do Green Hornet, then you have to go the one step extra and say Inspector Clouseau.
Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't remember that one. Yes.
Who's his sidekick, though?
Not now.
Oh, right.
Name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the name. All I remember is
I think it is Kato, actually.
Promised to go ahead.
No, I think it is Kato.
Nah, Kato's the Green Hornet. It's the other one. I was thinking also, what about Passepartout for Phineas Fogg, Around the World in 80 Days?
Or Max from The Great Race. Push the button, Max.
Push the button. Yeah.
Indiana Jones, not the Temple of Doom. Oh, Temple of Doom.
Yeah, it was the Temple of Doom. It was that 11-year-old kid was definitely his sidekick, who was incredibly competent. He was the getaway driver. It was, well, you know, if you don't like
not my cup of tea.
Voices of kids, but he was still a sidekick.
He was still a sidekick, and there's a push to make him the successor to Indiana Jones. So I believe, I'm not sure if he's Chinese or not, but he's running around the world bringing Chinese artifacts home. And so it would be a lot more interesting to watch him running around the 50s than, well, anyway, we don't have to get into that.
Right.
You know who my favorite sidekick this week is? Ruby Rod from The Fifth Element.
Nice. Why do you like her? What made you think?
Say what?
What do you love about her?
Her? Him.
Sorry, I don't know the story. Tell me a story, John.
Ruby Rod is the greatest media star. He's big. And he broadcasts the show.
Oh, him.
Chris
I forgot his
Tucker's
name.
character.
Chris Tucker's character. Yeah.
Yeah.
But was he a sidekick, though? He's not introduced till later.
He's a minor character.
I think he could become a sidekick because he ended up
a major character, and definitely in the fight scenes.
Yes.
So
yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah.
Is the sidekick always the sidekick? Is it a role that can come and go? The initial ones we stated, it's always a sidekick, except for the first one you stated, he wasn't a sidekick until he showed up. The other thing is that, go ahead.
No, go on.
The other thing is that if you look at the old myths, there's the heroic myths, Joseph Campbell myths, Cuchulainn. There are sidekicks everywhere, but most of them are not as pronounced as the later ones, like Pancho Sansa. There's a man who was fully a sidekick. Robin, there's a full sidekick. Jason had Argonauts. He had a full crew.
And Sherlock Holmes has his Watson,
Does it really count if they're an entire tribe of sidekicks, though?
See, I have to disagree. I don't know. If no single one is prominent and they're all supportive, I think you can have multiple sidekicks to a hero.
See, I think it's starting to sound like sidekicks are like pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it.
No, I think there's still the what is the one, if you call it the best supporting person, and maybe it shouldn't be best supporting actor and actress. Maybe it should be like, okay, I think of Les Miserables. Sure, you have Jean Valjean as the main guy, and then you have Inspector as the bad guy. But you also have this love story with Marius and Cosette, and Marius has a sidekick named Eponine. Now, she's not a huge, overwhelming thing, but she is very definite. She'll do anything for Marius. She'll run all of his errands. She supports him. She freaking dies for him. She's a sidekick, although not a major character. So
Yes, I could see that. Huh.
I was going to say, you guys remember when we talked to Carol Berg? She had a talk about how she had this great character and she liked him and she was playing with him and he was this powerful but flawed and she was working on it. And finally she realized that she needed his servant to be the point of view of the story. So the point of view was not necessarily the hero. The point of view can be the sidekick. Right. And the action. Well, while the hero is this great thing, but the hero of the story, the main antagonist, isn't the main point of view at the same time.
Right. Well, that's kind of a device that's used sometimes, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that the hero doesn't have to tell his own story, or so that he can tell it from a first-person point of view without the hero telling it.
Well, I've got one of a...
Watson and Holmes.
I have one of a sidekick that breaks the mold of that because they're there and they tell the story and they do it with no words whatsoever. Are you ready? Gromit.
Hit me.
Gromit and Snoopy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Wallace and Gromit, yep.
Okay, so let's go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say both of those are perfect for that because they're better than their humans, both of them. They're kind of cleverer than their humans. They have their own fully developed world and personality, but they advance the story while being that loyal, supportive follower without having to get in the way.
Yeah, and with Wallace and Gromit, you can even argue that the story is kind of told by the sidekick. I mean, he's the one who's kind of expressed the emotions that go along with the antics of the hero, right?
Yeah.
That is true.
One could argue that Bender the robot on what is the cartoon?
Futurama.
So it's not Farscape, it's an F word. It's Bender.
Yes.
Bender is such a great sidekick.
He's not loyal. He's like his anti-sidekick because he's not loyal, but he is loyal. He's untrustworthy, yet...
Are sidekicks always loyal, or do they just need a reason to hang around?
That's a good question. If your sidekick is hanging around for selfish reasons and exploitive reasons, are they really a sidekick? And they're not an antagonist, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I take that back. There is a sidekick category called the Starscream. And usually it's a villain sidekick who has disdain for the villain and plans to usurp them. So yes, there can be this tension between the character and his or her sidekick.
Well, didn't we all love Iago the parrot, who was the sidekick of Jafar in Disney?
I'm so glad you cleaned up. 'Cause I'm like, wait a second, Othello had a sidekick.
No, it was Gilbert Godfrey, who Dave does a great Gilbert Godfrey. Not that we're asking
for it. He's not going to do it now, though. No.
Actually, that's a valid point. You could kind of consider Iago, although he's the antagonist, to be Othello's sidekick. That's why Othello trusts him so much.
Yep.
And your sidekick may not always have your best interest at heart. So
see, we're back into the pornography now because Iago and Othello doesn't feel like a sidekick to me.
Well, but that's the thing. You have this archetype of Holmes and Watson. I fall into it too. Okay, your sidekick is there. They could tell your story. They'd be a reliable enough narrator. They have your best interest at heart, and that might not be the truth. But the sidekick is never a rival. I can say that for sure. If your sidekick can come against you and equal you, then they are not a sidekick. They're something else. So at least we can say that. Right.
Yeah. And in fact, in some of the retellings of Sherlock Holmes stuff, the Watson character isn't particularly loyal to Sherlock Holmes, at least at first. And in some cases, it's other interests that are keeping him hanging around. Sherlock Holmes is an asshole, and it's not pure loyalty that's keeping Watson hanging around him.
Well, that's interesting. It might be as time passes, we expect more from our characters. If you're hanging around with some, jackass all the time, why would we have sympathy for you when you get bitten? You lie with dogs, something, snake bites. I don't know. There's an analogy in there somewhere. So to kind of combat that, we have to give sidekick their own backbone. What do you say, John?
Lie down with dogs, wake up with fleas.
Really? There's no snakes in that analogy?
I think he's referring to the dog being a sidekick to a boy and his dog. A beautiful, beautiful love story.
Probably.
Not Snoopy to Charlie Brown?
General idea. There is the post-apocalyptic Charlie Brown.
Oh man, I've been meaning to read that. It looks so interesting.
Looks like it's heading more in that picaresque novel way of the vagabond wanderer. So it could be, you can have a vagabond wander through history, through future, through space. All of them need a sidekick, and you can be as simple as a dog. It can be as genius in other species as Chewbacca. It could be anything, really.
There's a sidekick for the ages.
Yes, Jesus Lord. Chewbacca.
And slight detour here. What is it with sidekicks who don't speak English, who don't speak whatever the language is, but the hero can understand them perfectly?
Oh, like Ocean's 11?
I don't know.
Where the kid goes off and he's speaking, blah, 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 and he makes gestures like, no, we can't tunnel in there.
Oh, yeah. No, well, I mean, Chewbacca is a good example. R2-D2 and C-3PO are another.
Star Wars is full of them.
It is. And, I mean, I think, what was it? Guardians of the Galaxy made fun of that because Groot only has one phrase, but it means everything. And what's his name can understand him perfectly every time, right?
Yes.
It's the inflection, the tilt of the leaf,
I'm sure, yeah.
The tilt of the leaf. Actually, that... I have to bring this up before I forget. The multiple sidekicks. Now, there's no story around Gladys Knight and the Pips, but I cannot let go of the idea that a protagonist can have multiple sidekicks. But I can't think of a better example than that.
Dreamgirls.
I don't know. It's a pretty good example.
Yeah.
Backup singers are sidekicks, sure.
Josie and the Pussycats,
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Heroine. Oh, Nancy Drew had George and Bess, and they were her sidekicks.
Yeah.
Shaggy would be a sidekick, and so would Velma, Daphne, and Fred.
Well, that's more of an ensemble sort of thing.
That's a good point.
Wild West.
Artemis Gordon, the proper one.
No, the villain who always opposed him, the little guy. He had two sidekicks. He had Richard Mayhew, the sidekick. Not Richard Mayhew. I'll have to go back and research it. But the good doctor was played by a small person, and he had his singing partner on the show. And every Wild West, they would sing a beautiful little duet somewhere. And then he had the guy who played Jaws in the James Bond film. Two sidekicks, alike. Okay, I have to stop.
Okay. Yes. Actually, we're getting some gray area between sidekick and henchman, aren't we?
I don't know. I think henchman is something that you can go into a little bit of sidekick. I mean, let's look at Despicable Me. That is a bunch of cute little yellow sidekicks, if ever there were.
Yes.
No, they're henchmen.
Well, one of
is a henchman. Is a henchman just a one of multiple sidekicks?
No. Henchmen are henchmen. They have to be different. You can graduate from henchman to sidekick.
Yeah. Okay.
The named minions.
Sidekick is more. Sidekick. Okay, so
eventually they do their own ensemble. The unnamed minions are henchmen.
Okay.
I can live with that. Yeah.
Okay, so you have.
So a henchman
Dr.
is basically
Loveless.
a red shirt.
If you remember the Loveless, I just remembered it was the name played by Michael Dunn in the Wild West. I just bought the big series of the Wild West. So
played by Kenneth Branagh in the remake.
Yeah. That's Artemis Gordon. So Michael Dunn was the dwarf who played the original.
No, the bad guy was Dr. what?
Dr. Miguelito Quixote Lovelace.
Yeah, Dr. Lovelace. That was the.
Yeah, he was played by Kenneth Branagh in the movie version, which we will not mention again here, which was not anything related to the series. But he had Voltaire was the big guy, his you say henchman, but if you look at it as well, you're his sidekick. And then Antoinette was Phoebe Doran. So
Antoinette.
So yeah, I would say absolutely bad guys can have sidekicks too.
Right. So where does that leave us?
I think they remain as the good foil, whether you're using them as a point of view, whether you're using them as an expository, I don't want to say crutch, but an expository source. Yeah. I invented a sidekick when I after watching, which was one of the Thor movie where suddenly there was an intern. I'm like, that's it.
Hardcore.
My heroine needs somebody to order around and to teach things to so that people can understand how she thinks. But then he got so much personality that it was really super hard for me to shoot him. So I think, authors can get really emotionally attached to all their sidekicks.
Right. Well, they can get emotionally attached to any character.
Yeah. But, when it's a sidekick that you've suddenly created a lot of investment in, do you guys remember the exchange online when Rowland was saying, I have to kill people, and Martin said, my sweet summer child,
Kill your darlings.
Kill your darlings.
We have not yet mentioned one important function of the sidekick that is like the elephant in the room, near and dear to my heart. 2 words.
Sex appeal?
No. No, something more inherent to sidekicks, or something that is used more for in sidekicks is comic relief.
Well, I don't know. There's pieces of that we covered at the beginning when it was the hero was comic relief and the...
Well, the hero was incompetent, but yeah, I mean, those stories tend to be comedies because they're kind of flipping the whole sidekick thing on its head, right? So,
right.
Even in fairly serious ones, the sidekick does get the lighter role. Like early Batman, the funny lines are all Alfred's.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Now, there was somebody who brought up one. You posted this question on social media, John, and they brought up Nanny Ogg as the sidekick to Granny Weatherwax.
And we're still arguing about that, which is fascinating. But she has talked me around to her point in the early books. Nanny Ogg exists to sort of be a pressure relief to Granny Weatherwax. Although she is her own character, she will act the part of sidekick. And when Granny Weatherwax goes on a grand quest, Nanny Ogg's the one who comes along and saves her. And if that's not sidekick, I don't know what is.
I think sidekick is showing up and rescuing the hero when they get in trouble, or the heroine is useful, or to give the hero somebody to rescue, and both. I think a sidekick can be all of these things, with the full experience and panoply of human and inhuman expression, lest I be speciesist.
Yeah, well, so...
You can totally be speciesist.
So piece of advice...
All characters are human.
Piece of advice I was just able to give to one of the newer writers, a real good use of a sidekick when you're learning to write is so you can put the hero and the sidekick together and have them hash out either what's going on or what they need to do about what's going on or what they should be doing about their life, whatever question you're trying to get to in the story. Just put them together and write that scene or storyboard that scene or talk that scene out, whatever, and you will find A, the direction you want them to go, and B, what exciting way they can go that way. And that's one reason why to have a sidekick is to help your writing process. You don't always need a plot ninja, but you should always have a sidekick handy. Well, all right, you always need a plot ninja, but that's a different story. You guys know what a plot ninja is, right?
No, go ahead and explain.
My understanding of the plot ninja comes from unsuccessfully participating in NaNoWriMo multiple times. And if you're in a writing group, someone will say, I need a plot ninja because they need to move their plot along. And they don't need a Deus Ex Machina. They don't need God to come from the sky and fix things. They just need something to happen. And someone will give them a plot ninja to the point that people were trading little ninja figures back and forth. So a classic plot ninja might be, oh, well, the heroine's unknown, dead relative wasn't actually dead and shows up and then is fridged. That's a plot ninja. Now you've, that's what a plot ninja is.
They don't have to be great ninjas. They just have to be plot ninjas.
Well, it sounds like any element in it maybe can be random or suggested. So if I've written myself into a corner and trying to figure out what am I going to do it out there, you can throw, what if a busty lesbian barmaid suddenly came crashing through the ceiling from some other completely other thing and sees my hero there tied up and she, rescues him. Sure.
I don't think that's a little Deus Ex Machina.
I think it's exactly, except for it's not God out of the machine. It's busty lesbian.
Goddess from the ceiling. That's what it is.
Goddess from the ceiling.
How are we going to get her in?
Is it still God if God's throwing a human in to save you?
Depending on how you feel about divine will versus the writer's will. I mean,
versus
Anytime
Bucky.
anybody asks me if I'm the god for my characters, they better all say yes.
Less arguing, more busty lesbian beer maids.
Right? That rescue a poor hero that got tied up and dumped into this castle, which is actually not really a castle. Maybe it's a tenement after all. We found out they rented the front half. Times were hard. You know, it's not easy to fund your robot army.
It's
Build
not,
the
as we've
robots.
learned.
Build the robots.
That's right.
We got to link to the
Well,
song. Okay. Side note, we have to link to the song Build the Robots. Okay, we'll put a link in the notes. I'll put it in.
Excellent. And then, you know, there's a point that you can have. We did briefly mention both the idea of Alfred Pennyworth as Batman's sidekick, but it's also Robin. So your sidekick can graduate and have their own series. Nightwing, you know, got his own line. There was actually a whole series of Robins. Some got squished by bugs. Some went on to become superheroes in their own right. So
That is true.
there is a mechanism by which the sidekick who is perhaps less than or not or uninterested in ambition can go out and become the protagonist of their own story.
get promoted.
And if your sidekick is too old, they can have offspring and cousins and nieces and nephews that come in to take on the mantle if necessary. Don't ask me how I know that.
Well, yeah. Let's think about Hamlet's sidekicks, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They got their own play. So
Yeah, but Shakespeare didn't write it.
He's dead.
I don't know.
I like the idea that somebody will use my characters long after I'm dead. So, yeah. So,
Good point.
That's if we sum up here, how do we sum up? Sidekicks are awesome. You can use them for a point of view. They can be a plot device. They can be, as Dave says, comic relief. They can be. I vote for not as much fridging because I'm really tired of fridging as a plot device.
Yes.
Well, it kind of ends their usefulness as a sidekick at that point too, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, you know, I'm still crying over Goose in Top Gun. So,
Wait, Goose got killed?
yeah, Goose died in Top Gun, man. Oh, spoiler alert.
Never seen Top Gun.
I haven't seen it yet.
Loser. Okay, go watch Top Gun for the homoerotic volleyball scene, if nothing else. Because
There's actually a sequel coming to that thing because evidently the 80s have to be relived now.
The Top Gun house is here in Oceanside.
I believe it.
They just moved it. It's sitting in the courtyard of a hotel they're building now.
Of course it is.
Anyway.
So
Anywho.
sidekicks, they have a life of their own. Give them life. Give them depth. Decide things about them. I mean, happy writing. Wait, who's your favorite sidekick that you've written, Dave?
Don't put me on the spot. I can't think of anything at the moment.
Have you written any sidekicks? We killed John. Raymond, you got any good sidekicks?
Interestingly enough, the book I'm working on, Two Dead Flies, my hero grows up with a kid named Kwame who likes to tussle and wrestle with him as kids. And I've been exploring giving him his own story in his own book. So I would say that of the few I've written, he would be my favorite. He would definitely be my favorite.
Awesome.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I end up doing things to him I wouldn't do to the main character. So, you know.
Why is that?
Because the main character, I just have a story arc for him. Like, this is what I need this guy to do. And it kind of strains the story. I will admit that. But with the sidekick, I can kind of pants it. And so every time I come up with an element, that'd be good. That'd be great. I just enter it into the plot and keep working on it. So I don't know. I'm not a pantser at all, but it's kind of a...
Well, it sounds like you have a pants relief. Your sidekick is a pants relief valve.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I might have to use that. It is now mine.
Excellent.
And welcome to it.
And they can be spouses, and they can be girlfriends, they can be dogs, they can be pets, they can be robots. You know, have imagination. Love your sidekicks. Silent Runnings. Huey, Dewey, and Louie were the sidekicks, and I cried when that little robot died. So.
Oh, are you gonna bet? Are you gonna bet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we love our sidekicks.
We did not mention that a sidekick can make the story a lot more memorable, because you can have a weird sidekick who you can remember with only a couple traits. You don't have to flesh your sidekick fully out, and you don't have to give them, a tortured conscience. and they help the story arc, but they're not the main pusher of it. So Huey, Dewey, and Louie, they're very memorable. They have a couple points where they do good things, but then the main heavy lifting is just done by the main character there.
Yeah. Well, we will put links to the stories, movies, and interesting things we mentioned on the website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter. We answer email. We would love to hear about what your favorite sidekicks are. If we didn't cover them, throw them out. Tell us why you love them. Sidekicks can be important. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web support magic is brought to you by Deirdre McGaffey-Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spider is Dave Welsh. Our intro music is Pretty Maid Milking a Cow, and our exit music is Breakfast with a Morning Person, both by Michael Engberg. You can hear more from Michael Engberg on manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsors are always Jackal Designs and the Bean Scene in downtown Sunnyvale. Vote for Larry. Thank you for listening.
Kill.
Kill.
Vote.